Hello, all, and welcome to the Movie Bears podcast. And actually, it just dinged like twice or something, so I don't know if it caught everything. So I'm going to give it 10 seconds and try this again.
Sure, yeah, that'll be fun.
Stupid false dings. False start. Hello, all, and welcome to the Movie Bears podcast. I'm Brad Harrison. Each week, I'm joined by hunky, hairy, huggable homos who love film to discuss movies and dish a little bit of movie news. With me, as usual, are my fantastic co-hosts, Jim Pliofko. Welcome back.
Thanks, and welcome to the podcast, everyone.
Will Lindis is here, too. Welcome, Will.
Hey there, boys and girls. So glad to have you back with us again.
Awesome, awesome. So, we have a lot to talk about tonight. We are going to be reviewing The Revenant, and if you have not seen that film yet, fret not. We are going to give you some advice, spoiler-free, on whether we think you should see it before we get into our super spoilery review. But it's been a few weeks since we've done some movie news, so we're also going to serve up some of that for you here. Guys, I'm going to do my best to stay here and be focused, but I got to tell you, we're just coming out of a local bear event, La Fiesta de los Osos, which was off the hook, yo! It was awesome, so much fun. But I am running on 4 hours of sleep. Oh my god! I am amazed I'm even awake right now. So I'm gonna do my best. I promise.
Yeah. Sounds like it was fun. It sounds like if here was the hook, it sounds like that event was way over here, way off of it.
That's pretty true. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. To use a sports analogy, we played hard, gave it 110%, and left it all on the field.
Oh my!
Nice. But what happened? But what happened in the locker rooms afterward? Ponder that. And
and we're off.
Oh boy! All right. So let's just dive right into some of our movie news here. Jim, why don't you kick us off? What's got your interest this week?
Well, the weekend was pretty devoid of movies, but one of the things that caught my eye just before the weekend was it kind of lit Twitter and Facebook on fire, was this surprise release of a trailer for a movie called 10 Cloverfield Lane. For those of you who are on Twitter and follow movie blogs and stuff, this thing kind of went off the charts. So I guess in people who went to the movies this weekend on Thursday night to see the opening night of the movie 13 Hours, you know, the bearded white dudes running around with guns in the desert movie, there was this trailer that came on 10 Cloverfield Lane, and I'll kind of describe the trailer a little bit. It looks like it's got John Goodman in it. It's got Mary Elizabeth Winstead in it. And it looks to me kind of like a trapped in a living in an underground bunker, and something maybe mysterious is going on. You're not sure why they're down there. There's not much, if any, dialogue in the trailer except for the very end, so it doesn't really give away a lot. Nobody's sure why they're down there. But the real mysterious part is the name of this movie. It's 10 Cloverfield Lane, and it's not clear whether this movie is or is not a sequel, a prequel, a spin-off of the movie Cloverfield, which I did not see. Will, maybe you saw it?
I did.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it quite a bit. We'll talk in a second.
Yeah. But anyway, this trailer kind of came as a total surprise to everyone because basically nobody knew about this movie. The Paramount, the studio, managed to keep this thing under wraps, and I mean, brilliant marketing. Boom, they throw this up on the screen. Everyone's trying to decide what it really is. I don't know what to say about it. I mean, there's a lot of discussion about whether this is a follow-up to Cloverfield. Is it a monster movie? Is it something totally different, and they're just trying to hook off of the name? Maybe it just takes place in the same universe or in the same world, but it's a totally different story. It remains to be seen what it is. Now, as I remember, Will, when Cloverfield first came out, it was kind of received. It was a found footage movie about a monster attack, basically, and I think it got a kind of a lukewarm reception from critics and fans at the time. It created a little bit of buzz, but it wasn't, didn't knock many people out, as I remember. But maybe you can kind of refresh our memories.
Yeah, so the big deal with Cloverfield was this was probably the first and most foremost of the J.J. Abrams mystery box films. He had kind of a famous TED Talk around the time this movie came out where he really loved the unseen mystery of cinema and creating things that were more about like what you don't know based on the trailer instead of what you do know. So the Cloverfield marketing campaign was brilliant in that you didn't know quite what it was. In fact, for the longest time, you didn't know that it was going to be a Godzilla-ish monster movie until kind of right until the film came out. You know, you weren't quite sure. And I remember the reaction being like a lot of buzz going into it, and coming out of it, there was mixed, probably leaning positive, but mixed responses. Yeah. I think a lot of it was based on the mystery thing. People went into it like not knowing what to expect, and because of that, drew their own conclusions. So you got to see some of that here with 10 Cloverfield Lane. I think the latest I saw on this is I think people are now leaning towards, or like some of the sources that have leaked some stuff, is that it's part of an anthology, i.e. it's like part of the same universe, but not like a direct sequel to the first one. And so we don't know what those ties are going to be. But it's that same mystery box thing.
Yeah.
So we don't know very much, except for John Goodman's in it, and it's kind of linked to this universe, right, which is intriguing.
I was just happy to see the trailer. I'm like, wow, there's a movie with John Goodman, and that looks like he has a real role. The only thing I remember hearing about Cloverfield was it was a Godzilla-like monster movie. It was a found footage movie, and it was very shaky cam. I think one of the main knocks on the movie was that it was too much shaky cam. People were getting motion sick. That whole thing. This movie looks totally different than that. It does not look like found footage at all. At least from what we can tell in the trailer.
Right.
I know that what people are trying to guess what it is and what it isn't, but it's all speculation at this point. We could be seeing in the trailer, we could only be seeing the first 5 minutes of what is really a monster movie. It could turn out to be a monster movie. The movie's being released in IMAX, which is, it seems to me they wouldn't probably film a confined space movie inside a bunker in IMAX for that effect. So they may and they may not. If they're doing something really ingenious, I guess they are. But I'm hoping that I don't know what I'm hoping. I'm just hoping to be surprised. I don't want to see any more about this movie. I just want to go see this movie and have it surprise me and be good.
Yeah, I mean, there's more that's been since found out. I guess plug your ears, Jim.
Well, I know it's based on a movie that was out, a description of a movie that was out called Valencia, and that had they basically renamed the movie, I guess.
Yeah, so it's like it was its own script, and then that turned into something called The Cellar, and then J.J. Abrams has kind of pulled it under this, even though he's not the director. I guess this guy named Dan Trachtenberg, and it's his first theatrical release, which is kind of exciting too. But I guess the last J.J. Abrams said was that it's going to be a blood relative to Cloverfield, whatever that means.
Yeah.
Interesting.
The thing is that the thing that Trachtenberg did was something to do with some kind of Portal. It was some kind of short based on the movie Portal. I think you guys have seen that. And that's a very special effects laden project. So again, that maybe leads me to think that this trailer is maybe misdirecting us a little bit as part of this mystery box idea into thinking that it's this small drama about these people trapped in a bunker or being held against their will or whatever, when it could be something totally, totally different.
It may. I don't know.
Babe, did you see Cloverfield?
I did see Cloverfield, and it's interesting because I typically do not get motion sick during movies, except on very, very rare occasions. And that movie made me want to puke in my popcorn bucket. So it is not a fun movie that I like to revisit. Plus, I don't know, like found footage, it was kind of, it was kind of awesome at the time, and I do like J.J. Abrams, but I just felt like, as found footage movies go, that one was just a little, I don't know, blah. It didn't do a lot for me.
Yeah.
So, it'll be interesting to see what this movie is going to be. The whole blood relative of Cloverfield has got me wondering if it's like, I don't know, like, is it a prequel? Is it a sequel? I'm not really sure.
None of the above.
Yeah, none of the above. Is it like Fallout 5, Cloverfield? Like, who knows what this movie is actually going to be? We'll see.
Yeah. We'll find out on March 11th when this movie comes out, which is right around the corner, really. So,
relatively speaking, yeah.
I could kind of, yeah. And by the way, this thing was the screenplay was written, partly written by Damien Chazelle. You guys know that name, don't you? He wrote Whiplash.
Whiplash, yes.
Right, yeah, definitely.
Director of Whiplash. So this has some high horsepower behind it. It's probably the movie that's coming up, the closest movie coming up that's got me really excited.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think the marketing on this is everything that we've wanted from marketing, right? Like, we talk about, like, oh, we don't like watching trailers because they reveal too much. This is a trailer that revealed absolutely nothing and yet still got us excited. So, kudos.
Right.
Bring on March, and we will find out for sure. Well, for me this week, mine's kind of a short one. The Big Issue did an interview with Stan Lee. Will, I don't know if you read this interview already or saw it today. It's been making the rounds on the internet. But I guess he was asked, since Disney has the rights to the Marvel characters for their movies as well as Star Wars, if there could be any kind of Marvel/Star Wars crossover, since Marvel is also doing the Star Wars comics. And Stan Lee said, "Can you imagine Spider-Man saying, 'May the Force be with you'? It may come to that. If Disney feels that incorporating Star Wars with the Marvel characters will be successful, they may find a way to do it." And he went on to say how awesome he thought it would be if Luke Skywalker was suddenly an Avenger. I don't think this is anything that's going to happen anytime soon. But my question to you guys is, how do you feel about a potential like Star Wars Guardians of the Galaxy crossover or something? Would that be cool for you, or?
Yeah, they're not really needed. Like, I think both universes, to me at least, I think both the Marvel universe and the Star Wars universe are things that have a lot of promise, have a lot of, like, really solid direction behind where they're going, and I think any forced attempt to try to push them into one big, massive thing would probably do a disservice to both. And I think, to Disney's credit, I think they realize that. Like, I know I love Stan Lee. Like, as a comic book nerd, I can't not love everything that the man says. But I think at this point, I think it's just, I think he was fanboying kind of as much as the rest of us are.
Jim, how do you feel?
Yeah, I think you guys probably know how much I detest the idea of franchise crossovers generally, especially. Will, you hit it on the head. Both franchises are very successful and beloved. Well, I mean, not much of a franchise, I guess. Guardians of the Galaxy, it's got one movie, and we loved it.
Well, that's part of the Marvel universe, so it's like it's like a 16 film deep franchise.
You know what? It is. It is. I don't know. Yes, as far as the two universes go, I don't want to see more. Everybody wants to ride the Marvel train, I guess, and that's kind of what it feels like to me. We got two successful things. Let's combine them together and be a super success. But it could also be a total shitstorm, and like you said, Will, to the detriment of both franchises. So, yeah, I'm not. It doesn't excite me in the least, really. Yeah. I think it's fuck that shit. I don't care.
Quote from Jim: "Fuck that shit. I don't care."
Yeah.
Nice. We got a live comment from Felipe Garcia.
He agrees with me about Marvel.
I knew he was going to chime in on this. Hey, Felipe, what's up? He says, those two universes are my life. But simply put, no. Bad Stan Lee. And yes, I agree. I'm right there with you guys. I think these two franchises are their own thing, and they should be kept that way. I love Star Wars, but I am a little worried about Star Wars overexposure at this point with a movie every year for the next 6 years plus. I definitely don't want Star Wars characters to start popping up in Marvel movies or vice versa. I would hate for the Star Wars films to become a platform to get people into the Avengers. I think that would be dumb. Like Luke is having this, epic lightsaber battle with some evil person, and all of a sudden, like, the Vision shows up. Like, it would just be messed up. Like, I would not be into that at all. So,
but the fanboy inside me says, what happens if a lightsaber hits Captain America's shield? Like, what would happen? Would the universe explode? Who would win?
The fanboy in me says I need about 4 hours of research and and the nerdiest possible internet forum, and I can definitely answer that question for you. But
all right, so listeners, here's your homework for next week. If Luke Skywalker got into a fight with Captain America, would his lightsaber cut through Cap's shield?
Or Kylo Ren?
Or Kylo? Ooh,
that's the part B of the question.
Captain America versus Kylo. I would be okay with a short film for fun. That might be interesting.
Oh, it's coming. It's probably already out there.
They make a lot of great ones like that, they make a lot of shitty ones too. But I've seen some. I saw this one. I forget the filmmaker's name. It was a very short film where it was basically Batman versus Darth Vader.
Yes, I remember that. Yep.
And it was ridiculously good for kind of a fan-made short. So yeah, bring on any up-and-coming short filmmakers that want to do a Kylo Ren versus Captain America fight. You get our thumbs up. Yes, please make this short film so that we can finally answer this question.
That's right. We'll even give you $5 towards a Kickstarter. So.
Yes. Well, my wallet's right somewhere.
And Felipe says challenge accepted. So Felipe, for next week's show, send something in, or better yet, if you feel like joining us, even you can talk about it a little bit. But do your homework. Get back to us. Let us know how that's going to work. But all right. Well, that's it. Hopefully, I don't know. Maybe they'll keep those two things separate. Maybe Stan Lee was just wishing and hoping and dreaming. Keep my Star Wars pure, pretty please. Anyway, Will, what have you got this week?
So mine is, I did terrible planning for this one because I have a vinyl pop art, the little toys that for the news item that I'm about to give, but it's at the other end of the room and not the one sitting on my desk, so I feel like I did a bad job of planning. Anyways, this is Deadpool news. So there's this movie coming out on February 12th, I believe, the new Deadpool movie, which he's kind of a Marvel anti-hero. He's owned by Fox, so this isn't Disney Marvel. This is the Fox side of Marvel that's producing this film. One of the later news items that has come out, or latest, has been the fact that this is going to be an R-rated movie and not PG-13, which is probably good for the character. This is a character known for hyperviolence and, kind of dealing with assassinations and stuff. But the news that I wanted to talk about is the China Film Group, the board that's responsible for deciding which films get aired in China, which ones don't, which ones have to be edited before they can play, has said, nope, this film is too violent for us, and have absolutely banned it from China.
Wow.
So this is kind of big news for two reasons. The fanboy in me is excited about this. I think that a Deadpool movie, compared to a lot of other movies that can get by with PG or PG-13, of the superhero movies, Deadpool needs a rated R, I would say. This is a character who needs to be shooting things and slashing things with swords, and you need to have some villains cursing at him or what have you. So I'm totally cool with that. But China is right now the second largest theatrical market in the world, so this is going to be a dramatic cut against this movie's international box office numbers, which might impact future movies, etc. Now, part of me is okay with that. I love franchises for certain things. I don't think this needs to be a franchise. I think it's potentially a really good one and done, and so this isn't necessarily a bad thing, but at the same time, I'll be interested in seeing how it kind of shakes out if it does impact Fox's ability to make another one, because they are cutting out on the China market. So that's my news. Thoughts on this one?
all I know about Deadpool, I learned from Felipe and from the trailers.
Ah,
Basically.
he is the merc with the mouth, Jim.
Yes, I know that. I've heard that, and I know Felipe is going to probably comment on this because he is very, very much looking forward to Deadpool. I know it's right near the top of his list.
Mm-hmm.
Probably, and maybe it's going to play on the screen. I don't know how it's going to go. As far as what China does, hey, this isn't the first time they've taken hard stances against things, right? I mean, we had that whole dust up with was it Korea, North Korea, on the
interview.
The interview movie.
Right.
And I know it's a totally different situation and for totally different reasons, but and North Korea probably isn't as big a box office as China is.
No.
And so yeah, I don't think it's going to hurt. I don't think it's going to hurt Marvel at all. To not have this movie seen in China. I think people in China who want to see it will probably be able to see it somehow, because of the way the internet works and kind of sneak pathways to get movies around. But not playing in theaters, I don't think will hurt them. It sounds like this is going to be interesting to see. Have we had a hard R, or have we had an R Marvel movie yet?
I don't believe we have. I don't believe we have.
Right. So this is going to have a different flavor, I think, than the Marvel movies, and that alone will be interesting to me to see how they kind of bust their mold a little bit for this movie, and to see if it works. See if if it kind of breaks out of that Marvel cookie cutter mold a little bit. I'm for that reason alone, I'm excited to see this. I know nothing about it, so it's going to be interesting to see how it plays on me, the person who's not familiar with Deadpool.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Go ahead, Brad.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know an awful lot about Deadpool either, aside from his appearance in the Wolverine Origins movie, which apparently is retconned at this point. Will, is that right?
Yeah. They basically, it was probably the worst appearance of a comic book character I've seen appear in movies, and that's I think that's part of why that movie is so kind of universally panned. Like they very much missed the mark on a lot of things in that particular one.
Yeah,
it was the worst. Yeah, that was one of the worst offenses from what I heard.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm really interested to see what they do with it. I like the concept of the character. The trailer has been entertaining for me, but having seen the Red Band stuff, I can definitely understand why China may not be interested in having that film air. So I don't know. It's a dicey subject. It's a weird line, right? I'm just glad we live in a day and age where speech is free and we can watch Marvel movies with an R rating that maybe aren't as fucking boring as Thor 3.
It's potentially, it's potentially a lot of money missed out for Fox, because when you look at, and granted, this is Disney Marvel, not Fox Marvel, so different markets, whatever. But Guardians of the Galaxy and Ant-Man both pulled in $100 million in China alone. Avengers: Age of Ultron was like $240 million in China, so that's significant. But again, I like the idea that they can make a film that's maybe not for all audiences, that's for a more limited audience, and maybe it doesn't make as much money, but it doesn't have to. It just has to make enough money to be profitable and to tell an entertaining story. So I'm kind of good with this news.
Yeah, definitely. Maintain the vision, and I don't mean the Avenger. I mean like the creative vision behind the film.
Do they think that the R rating is going to impact the box office in some way, either positive or negative?
Well, I'm sure. So as you increase your rating, you're always going to be limiting out some of your audience. That's why a lot of the big blockbusters do aim more for a PG-13 instead of an R, because they want to get as many butts in seats as possible. So this will definitely have an impact, not only, obviously on the international, since we're losing the largest international market, but even on the domestic, we're going to see a smaller number of tickets sold just because of that R rating. Now, that said, I need to look this up, but I don't know what the budget is for Deadpool. If they're smart, they're going for a comparatively smaller budget for a comparatively smaller number of butts and seats, and you can still be extremely profitable that way. Think about the horror market. You can
Blumhouse stuff.
Yeah, you turn around a $2
Right.
million horror movie and make $35 million. Now, this is not going to be a $2 million movie, but I'm sure it's not going to be a $150 million budget either. So and maybe it is. I don't know. Maybe I'm completely wrong there.
Not from what I can see, anyway.
Yeah, if they're smart, they're budgeting shorter, knowing that they're going to have less butts in seats, but they're still going to turn a profit based on however they're forecasting.
Right. Yep. Right. Well, I think that about does it for movie news. Are we ready to get to our film review for the week?
Yes, sir.
All right. So, as I mentioned earlier, we are going to be discussing the new Leonardo Dicaprio Inarritu flick, The Revenant. As usual, we are going to talk about it pretty spoiler-free. Just to give you an idea, if you have not seen this film yet, whether we think it's worth your time, whether you like our opinions enough to let it influence you, I mean, is totally up to you. But we're going to talk about it anyway, and then we'll give you a fair warning before we go into full-on spoiler town. Guys, are we ready to dive in? You all set? Did you put on your parkas? You got materials to make fire? You good to go?
No, I just decided not to shave my beard this week, so I'm all scraggly as fuck. So I think I'm ready for this one.
All right, here we go then. Our discussion of Revenant. All right, so Will, why don't you give us a little setup for this film? What's it about? And just, kind of spoiler-free thought. Should people see it?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is a movie that's probably on a lot of people's minds right now, in that it's one of the last major releases of 2015 to be hitting most markets, here in January. Plus the staggering 12 nominations at the Academy Awards that were just announced this last week. A lot of people have either seen this movie or are wondering if they should see it. This is a sort of Western film created by director Alejandro Inarritu. He's the same guy that brought us Birdman last year, which is a film that we reviewed on the show, with Leonardo DiCaprio and Tom Hardy in the leading roles. Cinematographer Emmanuel Lubezki behind the camera, one of the best guys in the biz right now. And it's a film about this dude, and this is like the early 1800s. He's a fur trapper on this expedition with other fur trappers, and things go sour, and he is left for dead after a pretty interesting event happens. And after being left for dead, he kind of rises from his own ashes, so to speak, and plots his revenge. That's pretty unspoilery. That's in the description. I think that's fair. So should you go see this movie? This is a resounding yes for me with like a big asterisk next to it. I loved this movie. This hit every single one of my buttons. I think Inarritu is one of the... He's not always one of the best directors working today, but he's always one of the most compelling directors working today. I mentioned Lubezki behind the camera. He is one of the best cinematographers / DPs in the industry. This is the same guy that brought us Birdman, that brought us Children of Men, that brought us Gravity. This guy is just gold. He creates some of the most beautiful, breathtaking images in cinema. DiCaprio is at an all-time high for me. I think that this is a guy who turns in one of probably my favorite performance of the year. It's very raw, very visceral what he does. This is a dude that's a very physical actor when he's at his best, whether it be like the steamy romance scenes of Titanic or the violent outbursts from The Departed, the douchey charm that he throws on in Gatsby and Wolf of Wall Street. But here he's really at his peak, probably his best performance since The Aviator. While he doesn't have a whole lot of dialogue in parts of this film, every edge of this movie he is putting his all into it. This is definitely a very strong physical performance. Other side of the coin, we've got Tom Hardy, who is a scene stealer with a lot of the juicier dialogue in this movie, all pulled off without a hitch. This is a bleak and brutal movie, and that's where the asterisk comes from. This movie is perfect for me, but I see a lot of messed up movies. Like, I love horror, I love thrillers, I love hyperviolence, I love that stuff. this movie made me cringe more than any other movie I saw in the last couple of years. And so that's saying quite a bit. So there are probably some audience members who will be put off by how violent this movie is. And if you're one of those people, maybe this isn't the right movie for you. But if your tastes align with me, if you listen to this show and you kind of think like, yeah, I kind of like what that Will guy is saying, you should absolutely go see The Revenant because this is a fucking amazing movie.
All
Will,
right.
yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, Jim. I mean,
I'll jump
what
right in.
Yeah, do it.
All right. Yeah, Will, I really like The Revenant too, although I'm not quite sure I put it quite as high as you. It was in my top 10 of the year also. Definitely one of the standout films of the year, and I think maybe had something to do with the fact that I made my top 10 list like within days of seeing this movie. This is a movie that has has the ability to have a profound impact on somebody watching it. As you said, Will, Lubeski is amazing. His cinematography in this movie should win. I try not to put too much stock in the Oscars, but in terms of how good it is, it deserves to be recognized, and it deserves to be seen. I loved it. I think Leonardo DiCaprio was good. It was a tough. I guess it was a tough role for him. And we're going to get into some of the reasons why I actually like Tom Hardy's role a little bit better, maybe, or at least as much as Leo's, but he is the lead. Tom Hardy is a supporting actor in this. And I think Leo DiCaprio is certainly worthy of the nomination in this category, and I don't even know who would even beat him out. This is one of those showy performances, right, that's going to get a lot of attention. Not super deep, but just really showy on the surface. Kind of like this movie. It's very showy. Will, you mentioned the hyper-violence. People are going to know within the first 10 minutes of this movie whether they're going to want to sit through it or not. And that's kind of all I'll say about that. But I just love the way this movie shows us all the action. It kind of reminds me back of a movie I saw with I can't forget the guy's name, Charles Martin Smith maybe, called Never Cry Wolf. That wasn't a revenge movie, but it was a survival movie about a guy, out on an expedition in the middle of snowy winter nowhere, trying to survive, and in that case get along and kind of study a family of wolves. It kind of reminded me a little bit of what was the wolf movie we saw last year? Please help.
The wolf movie.
You mean The Gray from a few years ago?
The Gray, yeah.
The Gray.
Yeah. This movie had kind of harkened back to The Gray a little bit. Again, totally different story and narrative, but you got some of the same feelings being out in that setting. I would say that people should see this movie if they think that they can. If they don't mind some absolute brutality in this movie. I have a little bit of an issue with some of the themes in this movie. I'm still trying to figure out what this movie had to say to me after 2.5 hours, and whether that 2.5 hours, even though it was beautiful, gorgeous, and some of the action was great and fantastically filmed, if the narrative itself was worth all of the effort that went into it. But we'll have to wait for spoilers to talk that out. But yeah, I would say definitely go see this.
Yeah, I think for me, I probably come in a little less forgiving than you guys. I liked this movie a lot. I definitely think it's worth checking out on the big screen if at all possible. Don't wait for rental. It is a visual spectacle to behold. I think my problem with this movie is it's about 40 minutes too long. And I don't want to spoil, but I think I kind of reached my limit with like the crawling around and grunting. I don't know how much of that you can do and still, at least for me, maybe my attention span is just short. I don't know why I feel the need to justify my opinion, but I am. It was a little much for me. I'm kind of like, okay, can something please happen? Like, let's move the plot along. Let's see what's going to happen here. rather than like, oh, okay, here we go again. Maybe I should just go pee right now. Let me use that Go Pee app and find out, is this the spot where I should go pee? Is something about to happen? Do you know about the Go Pee app? Run Pee, is that what it's
Run
called,
P.
Jim? Run
Run
Pee.
P.
Yes, awesome app. But overall, I mean, it was a great film. I did really enjoy it, especially Tom Hardy. Man, I mentioned this on last week's show. I try to avoid reading a lot about movies before I go in. And so I didn't even know that he was in this movie. And, like, coming out of the film, I'm like, oh, my God, like, that dude, there's something familiar about him. I don't know who he is, but he was freaking amazing.
Who was that guy?
Jim's like, oh, yeah, Tom Hardy was great. And I'm like, that was Tom Hardy? Really? I just am constantly amazed by his ability to just transform himself into someone different. I mean, we've seen him in a lot of different roles at this point, and I don't know, that dude has got some chops. I really want to continue to see him do some amazing things. I'm sure he will. Leo DiCaprio, typically I am not a Leonardo DiCaprio fan, but I was very impressed with him in this film. With all his grunting and crawling around, I think he sold this well, and he did a great job. We'll talk a little bit in spoilers. There's a couple places where things kind of felt a little forced and weird for me, and I don't know if you're knowing what I'm talking about, Jim. We kind of talked about it previously, but by and large, I enjoyed it a lot. I did like seeing Domhnall Gleeson in this movie as well. It's funny, we just saw him in Star Wars: The Force Awakens. Yeah. And we saw him in an episode of Black Mirror this year as well. We've gotten into that show, and I'm glad Netflix has picked it up. But I'm anxious to see what else he's going to do. My question is, does The Revenant take place on the same planet as Starkiller Base?
It makes sense, right? Like, can we tie all the Domhnall Gleeson movies of the last
Tom
year
Hardy
together?
movies?
Yeah. I totally think that's what it. Stormtroopers guys like Old West French Indian War like reenactments. That's what it is. Like, they have a camp set up out there, and that's what was going on, I think.
One side of this world is the frozen Arctic environment that we get in this movie, and the other side below the equator is the barren wasteland desert of Mad Max Fury Road.
Nice.
So Tom Hardy could split duty between being, Mad Max and that asshole trapper that Leonardo has to deal with.
That's a hell of a cross-section if you really think about it in terms of, like, Tom Hardy and Domhnall Gleeson this year, because we've got Mad Max and we've got The Revenant for Tom Hardy. And for Domhnall Gleeson, we've got The Revenant, we have Star Wars, as you mentioned. He was also in Ex Machina this year, and he was also in Brooklyn this year.
Right.
So this is a dude who put in 4 really good performances in 4 pretty popular movies in their genres this year.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Wouldn't it be great if there could be an award for, like, kind of the aggregate, like, acting that an actor does and not just single performances?
Well, we've seen that before, haven't we? Like, remember McConaughey when he got the all of the love for Dallas Buyers Club the same year that he did Mud? And I think a lot of the general buzz and discussion was like, yeah, he was good in Dallas Buyers Club, but because he also did Mud and because that was such a below-the-line film but was so highly regarded, it kind of gave him a few extra votes and pushed him up there.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that kind of happens, but I don't think poor Domhnall Gleeson's going to benefit from any of that.
I think we need a new awards category, guys. Best Domhnall Gleeson in a supporting role.
Yes. Just call it the, oh, it's that guy award.
That guy with the famous dad award.
Right. Right. Anyway, so yes, definitely this is a go-see for me, even though I don't feel quite as positively as you guys. I'm sure you're going to be seeing a lot of love for it come Oscar time. May even win Best Picture, guys. I don't know if I'm ready to clinch that in as my prediction, but
I think the buzz for Oscars, and we'll see how things work out, is I think it's kind of a 3-horse race right now, right? Like, it's The Revenant, it's Mad Max, and it's The Martian. And I think any of those 3 have the potential.
And Spotlight's going to sneak in there and steal it.
Spotlight
It may.
really could, but
Could.
I feel like Spotlight's kind of lost some of its steam, right? We'll talk about that in the Oscar show. But I feel like, yeah. Let's talk The Revenant.
You want to know something awesome? A quick aside.
Yeah.
So we were at La Fiesta de los Osos this weekend, our annual bear run here in Tucson, and had someone come up to me, had never met him before, and he said, "Love your podcast. You know, I listen every week, and I got to know, when is your Oscar show going to be? When are you guys making your Oscar predictions?" He's like, "I base my predictions at our Oscar party off of some of what you guys say."
Oh boy, that means he's lost every year.
So here's the tip, the big tip for anyone that's, if you're listening in right now, mystery viewer, and wanting to know the Oscar prediction stuff. Wait until the last minute to put in your picks, if at all possible, because the buzz right now is not the same buzz that's going to be happening in a month.
Right.
And so films in the past that have, it's so weird, but like things sometimes will peak really early, or sometimes will have like kind of a late award show push. Things like, think about Carol. This was a movie that, if you had asked me what movie was a front runner a few months ago, I would have thought Carol, and it's lost all of its steam. Awards-wise, so
it's a game of momentum.
It really is.
Right.
So
it's a game of buzz momentum. If you've got the buzz momentum going in, and you peak at the right time, and you're being considered at the right time, anything can happen. It's kind of like sports.
And that's part of why.
In the end, it doesn't mean shit, but that's what it is.
You may have noticed I haven't locked in or published any of my. I guess this is kind of seeing how the sausage is made. But you might notice I haven't locked in my picks yet, and that's because we still have something like 39 days until the Oscars. We've got a lot of time for a lot of momentum to shift. So I still want to kind of check the temperature before I lock things in. That said, I am looking forward to when we do our show, when we can lock in our formal picks and we can kind of see how all that works out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we'll have to map out when that show is going to be, because I think my mistake last year was we kind of did that a little earlier, and what happened is I think things kind of shifted, and I ended up with egg all over my face in last year's show. Not again.
Not again. Nope, not this year. This year we'll hold it 2 days after the Oscars, and we'll be 100% right.
There we go. All right. Well, guys, I think it's time to get our spoiler on. Would you agree?
Yeah, let's do it.
I think so. This is a movie that's hard to discuss without discussing spoilers. There's some kind of key moments here, so I think we're there.
All right. So if you continue to listen, you do so at your own peril, but spoilers are officially fair game. Wanted to ask you guys, just to kick things off, does this movie give us bears a bad name?
No, because we're not that type of bear. The scene that you're referring to is, of course, the very brutal, very unrelenting bear mauling scene, which is when I did the description at the top of this segment, I mentioned there was an event where he's left for dead, and it's because he's mauled by a bear. Holy crap, that scene, right? That was one of the moments that really made me flinch, really made me uncomfortable watching it. It was harsh.
And it happened. It kept going and going and going. And just when you thought it was over, it would start again. And that's the thing that really, it's like the director didn't want you to just feel how bad it was. He wanted to punish you, right? And and the scene we're talking about, right? He basically haphazardly, he's supposedly a trapper, but he haphazardly wanders between two cubs and its mother grizzly bear, he gets stuck in that position, and the mother bear takes offense when one of its cubs starts to call out for her, and it's an out and out mauling by the bear that he endures, and it's really close up, it's brutal, and you're wondering how this thing's going to end. It's horrific, actually. But no, I don't think it gives us bears a bad name. But the bear did not end up on top in that battle.
Oh my God! Wow, Jim.
If you know what I mean.
Well,
actually, the bear did end up on top, didn't it?
Well, in a different way.
Yeah.
What's funny is, so there was some At one of the very first press screenings for this one back in whenever it was, some jackass, I don't remember who it was, came out of
Blogger.
it and was like, there's a scene where Leonardo DiCaprio gets raped by a bear, and he meant it like, I guess he meant it in like the, kind of the youth culture, like video game culture, like, oh, that bear raped him, like it really kicked his ass, but immediately Twitter thought that he was actually sexually assaulted by a bear. So it colored I guess people's impression of this movie well before they had a chance to see it, because one jackass posted one stupid tweet or blog, or forget which
Yeah.
one he started in.
Yeah, that was a big deal on Twitter. I remember when that happened. Um, yeah, there was no bear. Everybody coming back to this. There's no bear rape scene in here. It was terrible. But the scene that got me was, which was I thought was brilliant, was the long take scene at the beginning, which I'm not sure was a long take, but it played like a long take. There's a, I think it starts off with this peaceful forest, kind of floodplain forest, and DiCaprio and his son, I think, are tracking and trying to shoot an elk, to take an elk with their guns, and next thing you know, there's an attack on the trappers' camp by a Native American tribe that I guess they had issues with, and there's some as the movie unfolds, you learn more about the relationship between the natives there and the trappers that are trapping on their land and so forth. But that scene with its brutality, that the way it swept through this battlefield, I guess you could call it, and some of the killings that happened and the escape of the trappers was pretty harrowing.
Yeah, I think that's when we talk about. We mentioned Emmanuel Lubezki as the cinematographer, and we mentioned that we enjoy him. The reason why I enjoy him so much is he is masterful with these Steadicam shots that showcase a lot of things happening at once. Whether it be like the freneticness of all the shit going wrong in Gravity, or the panning view of just, well, I guess the one-shot nature of Birdman, or just the idea in Children of Men where it would like kind of scan over to the side and just show you something in the background which helps paint the color of the world that they live in. And you mentioned this particular scene here, Jim. Mostly one big shot that shows just all of these things happening and kind of all this entire, I don't know, this event unfolding in front of our eyes. And it's done in such a way where we don't really have focus on any one part of it for very long. Instead, we're just left to let the whole thing wash over us. And I think it was incredibly effective that they went that way with it.
I mean, we're seeing people, being hit by arrows, going through body parts and
right
knives.
through the fucking throat. Yeah.
Oh yeah. It was really crazy. And for some reason, and I'm not exactly sure why, the violence in here felt much more realistic than you'd see in most movies.
Oh, I totally agree.
It
Absolutely.
wasn't really even set off by super dramatic music.
Right.
If I remember right, it was just kind of like a steady drone kind of thing, and that gave it a kind of a more haunting, like I don't know, like visceral feel, like of dread.
There was even like violin music. You know what I mean? Not even like a thumping drum beat or something you might normally hear. You know what I mean? It's this whining violin, and I don't know. Haunting is a great way to articulate that, Jim, because it definitely gives you this feeling that, like, you're sort of in this brutal world where anything can happen. I mean, I talked earlier about Leonardo DiCaprio, like grunting and crawling his way through the snow for like 42 long minutes, and like at some points, he comes across like the Native Americans who are like trying to find, is it the chief's daughter? I'm not sure if he's the chief or not, but it's
someone's daughter. Yeah.
Yeah, someone's daughter, right? They're looking for her, and
she's gone missing.
Right, and he comes across them, right? Like he's in the river, and he kind of wedges himself in this hollow, trying to get away from them, and I just remember feeling like my God, this is so random. Like, if they find him, are they gonna put an arrow right through his eyes? Are they gonna capture him and try and get information out of him since they think that white men took the daughter? Or, and I just remember being scared for him, and I'm like, I'm like, please crawl faster so that like something can happen, and B, like, what's going to happen to Leo? How's this all going to get resolved? And the music was also a big part of that. I think it was so well done in terms of how it was sort of weaved together. So, the frenetic action and the music sort of go hand in hand. And I appreciated that this wasn't like a cookie cutter by the numbers battle scene. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, this was cinematically just gorgeous. Absolutely.
Yeah, you mentioned the score. Both of you mentioned the score. The guy that did the score here was someone who I don't believe has collaborated with Inarritu before. It's this Japanese musician named Ryuichi Sakamoto, who actually comes from like experimental electronics. If you listen to this score, and I don't listen to a lot of scores, but I went back and wanted to listen to this one because there were things that stood out to me. It's a really disconcerting score. Like, it's the type of thing that, like, sometimes you can listen to the thing where, like, you play it in the car and you're reminded of the movie, or you're reminded of, like, the uplifting moments or the sad moments. Instead, if I listen to this one, like, especially right before sleep, I might have nightmares. It is a very uncomfortable score, and I think that it was a genius stroke to use this score because it fits all of the brutal suffering. This is a film about kind of perseverance despite suffering. I think this score perfectly matches that.
Well, I'd like to talk a little bit about. I'm trying to figure out. You kind of hit on it a little bit there. Obviously, this movie. There's a lot of suffering in this movie, mostly by our lead character, Leonardo Dicaprio, brought upon him by bears and one bear attack, and also at the uncaring and fortunistic hands of his fellow trappers, right? Who kind of take advantage of his situation. One of them kills his son. We are in spoilers now, and that sets off the whole revenge trek of DiCaprio. I thought that I was trying to figure out by the end of we go all through this movie and we get to the end and he starts talking about revenge is only in God's hands. I think is what it says a couple of times, and then at the end. He has this brutal knife fight with Tom Hardy's character, and to the point of almost killing each other, and then he decides, revenge is in God's hands, and he lets him go to be captured and killed by the natives that are there. So I was trying to figure out what this movie seemed to. This movie's payoff didn't quite hit with me, I guess, by the end of the movie. I mean, I just sat through this 2.5 hours of gorgeous movie, some brutal scenes. I understand the suffering, but I didn't really see the redemption at the end or anything that I was expecting.
Well, and here's the thing with that moment, right? So he's like, okay, revenge is in God's hands, whatever. What does he think is going to happen when he lets the guy drift 3 feet away for the Native Americans to pick him up? Like, it's not like he's letting him go and letting God, make a judgment, right, as he lets him go out in the wilderness somewhere, right? He's pretty much letting him go to his death. He's just making the Native Americans do the work for him. So, is it redemptive? I don't think that it is.
I don't think this film is about redemption, though. I think that's
no,
and that's it's unfortunate too, because I think that would be the type of film that I think would be maybe more accessible, or like it would make it easier for me to recommend to a wider audience if this was a redemption arc film. This is a character who, one of his very first conversations he has with his son is about. You just keep breathing. You just keep breathing. You keep going. You keep living. You keep going despite all of these things. He mentions that line very early on about how you just kind of keep breathing despite adversity. This film ends with fade to black and then just his breathing over the end of it. This is a character who has suffered a whole lot. He is put through almost a Passion of the Christ style suffering at the hand of nature, and despite it all, he's still persevering. He's still pushing on. So I think what this film is trying to say, at least for me or whatever, there's certainly a majesty or a magic in death. We get to see some of that through his fever dreams of his wife, who died before the story began. But nature itself is beautiful and it is cruel, and it will make you suffer. And I think in this film's eyes, the natives are kind of a part of that whole thing, And I think that's, while we might look at that as kind of racially insensitive today, looking at it through the lens of the characters, I think it makes sense. So this is a film about suffering. It's a film about suffering, not about.
Yeah. No. You're right. It's a film about suffering. It definitely gets its points across kind of early in the film, but I don't know why it had to show. I guess how much suffering did it have to show to make its point? You know what I mean?
Right.
Because it didn't really put any kind of exclamation point on it at the end, at least for me. It was. One thing I wanted to touch on that I thought was a good touch. I liked some of the flashback scenes. I thought they were very well done. The kind of those dream sequence. Scenes. There were some about an event that apparently must have happened earlier on, where their camp was invaded by soldiers. I don't know if it was soldiers or it was another tribe. I can't even remember exactly what it was, but those flashback scenes with his son as a little boy and his wife were gorgeous. There was another flashback scene later in the hot box scene where his wife
There's
comes to visit him. Is that right? In that church. Yes.
There's I don't remember if it was there or not, but there's a spot where she does come to visit him.
Right.
Where she's all like, "You're me and more."
Right. It was very reminiscent of that Good Dinosaur scene when the dad comes back to Arlo and he's having this fever dream about a dead relative or dead loved one coming back into his dream and kind of giving him even more energy and resolve, I guess, to carry on and come back. He was near death several times in this movie and fought back. And it's a survival movie and about perseverance, and I definitely get that. I just wish there was something a little bit more, maybe a little bit more to dig into emotionally there.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends on how you take films like this. For me, I felt like this was we did our top 10 films of the year last week, and this was my number 4. And that honestly, that top 4, that top 5 were pretty darn close to interchangeable for me. For me personally, I felt like I had a lot to grasp onto in this movie, whether it be the thematic and the stuff about the suffering or the mysticism. The violence itself was really good. The acting was really good. The beauty of the shots. I feel like every single frame of this movie had something interesting to either to say or something interesting to show. And I think that's why I enjoyed it. I even enjoyed it. I know that it didn't work as well for you in this regard, and I'm totally cool with that. But I enjoyed the runtime on this one too. I compare this to other movies with similar-ish runtimes, like Hateful Eight, which I thought was a movie that was that totally squandered about an hour of its 3-hour runtime. Whereas for me, The Revenant, I felt like every second of this movie worked for me, at least personally.
Yep. Okay. All right. Yeah. I guess. Yeah. For me, I'm not saying it could have been. Brad was saying like 40 minutes. I don't know if it was just long or if to me it was just so a little bit redundant in spots. I mean, there were a lot of gorgeous shots in this movie. Some of them seemed like very similar to other shots in the movie.
Sure.
And I know it's almost like kind of like what do you call them? Chapter spacings in a book where you kind of have you'll have a series of scenes and some kind of action or forwarding of the narrative separated by just quiet and some kind of beautiful nature scene looking up at the trees. Lubeski definitely likes shooting up. If you notice in this movie, there's a lot of scenes from the ground level up, making everything look much more beautiful and majestic, and having quite, a cinematic impact. But maybe a technique that was maybe leaned on a little bit too much, kind of like the shooting through windows in Carol. We talked about that. So I get that that's your style, and it looks great, but I don't know. For me,
so here's what I liken it to. Would Gravity have been as good for you if we had as much Sandra Bullock free floating through space, going just over and over and over again between the big pieces of what's going on? Like if we literally had 3.5 minutes of her making those noises and trying to like float her way through space until she gets to the space station or gets to the... Would it have been as interesting? Even if you have these beautiful, majestic shots of Earth underneath her or the sun above her, like, would that have been as appealing to you, Jim?
No, but we didn't get that either. You know what I mean? We got some of that.
No, but that's what I'm saying. Like for me, that's the analogy that's coming to my head, because Gravity is all about like the survival thing as well, right? We have these stunning space shots.
Yeah, it's very, very similar. Very similar themes, I think, between that movie and this movie, and it survived. Just keep going, just keep breathing, it's kind of the strength of the human spirit.
Sure.
That one had a little bit more of a kind of a redemptive ending, I think. This one did that resonated a little bit more, but hey, to each their own,
Yeah, I think the difference between the two is that Gravity was more of a roller coaster, right? Like, we didn't have a moment to... I guess there was one scene where we got a chance to kind of stop and see what Sandra Bullock was going through, but most of the time it was really just kind of like being whipped from one action piece to the other. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I think Gravity was a very fun movie, and I enjoyed it quite a bit. I think it made my top 10 that year. I think this one, because of the nature of the setting and the nature of the character and the themes they were pushing for, I think that it worked better for this film to stop and let us see the character suffering than it would have in Gravity. Like, I don't necessarily think it's a one-to-one analogy, because the films were, while they were both kind of same cinematographer and both same, like, character going through the shit in a kind of a foreign landscape, I think both looked at it from a different lens.
Yeah. Hey, I gotta ask you guys, did anybody else mind's eye go when Leo crawled inside the dead horse?
Star Wars.
Did Star Wars come up in your mind or not?
In my head, I was thinking, I thought they smelled bad from the outside.
Totally stole it from Star Wars.
Right. And if you're like racking your brain trying to figure out what we're talking about, we're referring to in The Empire Strikes Back, Luke is like almost dead from being attacked by the Wampa. Han Solo finds him, uses his lightsaber to cut open the tauntaun and stuff him inside. In this movie, we're talking about Leo cutting open the horse, dragging out all of its organs, which was pretty sick, and then crawling inside the horse's body to stay warm overnight.
Yeah, you got to wonder, right, when they were shooting that scene, if Alejandro Inarritu is talking to Leo and says, "Yeah, you remember that scene in The Empire Strikes Back when Luke climbs inside the tauntaun? That's exactly what you're going to do here. So channel that.
Do you think there was a message of being reborn when he came out of the horse in the morning?
I think there were a lot of those moments. Like, this is a character whose job was to kind of keep breathing, like, even when he was up on the verge of death. And so we have that with the deer. We also have that with the, I don't know what to call it, but like where he's smoked inside of that that hut, where he emerges from the kind of the shallow grave that he's put in. Like, multiple times, this character is inches away from death, and then he just keeps breathing. He keeps pushing. So yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Like, and not just that scene, Brad. I think all kind of through the movie.
It's an overall theme. Yeah.
Yeah.
But this was a character he was ready to go. I mean, he at one point had given up. He had told the guy it was okay to let him go or take his life.
Whoa! I don't think that actually happened.
They had a deal.
No. Oh my God! If I said, Jesus, I don't think he was trying to keep his eyes open as long as he could so that the guy would not kill him. I don't think he was agreeing to.
I think he was agreeing. And then when the guy killed his son, I think that changed the whole game.
I'm with Jim on that one because the way that they shot that was, yeah, he did keep his eyes open as long as possible, but when he blinked, I then kind of take a look at it from like the filmmaker's perspective. Like if they wanted to show us that he was not trying to blink at all, they would have cut before that. But instead, when he did the blink, it was kind of slow and almost like he closed it slowly, and it almost looked like he was resigning himself to death. And then when the stuff happened with his son getting killed, it almost like gave him the fire that he needed to say like, well, no, I'm not dying yet. I've got to do this one thing first.
Well, I definitely, I appreciate that this can be taken multiple ways, and I know you two agree. But Felipe, thank you for bringing the cavalry in and giving me some support here. Because Felipe says, I think he was not agreeing. And Felipe, that's absolutely the take that I had as well. I felt like he's in a position where he can't talk, there's nothing he can do, and Tom Hardy gives this impossible thing. If someone tells you not to blink, like if David Tennant shows up in a TARDIS and says, "Don't blink," what's the first thing you're gonna fucking do?
Well,
but you're not gonna do it slowly and kind of look down and almost like you're giving up. Plus, there's a line later on where Tom Hardy says, "You even gave me permission to do this. You even told me that." And DiCaprio wasn't like, "Nuh-uh, I didn't blink, bitch." Like he was more just like saying, I think that the point the film was trying to make was this was a character who was willing to give up and willing to do kind of the right thing, which is kind of die for the sake of his son and for the sake of the others. But once that one dude, once Tom Hardy wronged his son, like it gave him a desire to be the Revenant, to kind of come back from the dead.
Based on a sense of revenge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So let me ask you this then: if Tom Hardy hadn't killed the boy, right, and if he had just killed Leonardo DiCaprio, that would have been totally cool. That would have been fine. If he was like, "Hey,
with who? With us as the audience, or with DiCaprio?
With you guys, like you wouldn't have felt that guy like a little villainous or shady or
I think we still would have, because the guy's whole thing up until that point had been like he multiple times before that was just like, let's just leave this guy. So the guy was an asshole all the way through. I'm not saying that this at all justifies that character's decisions. I'm just saying that this guy put the DiCaprio character in a kind of an impossible situation, like you mentioned, but the DiCaprio character, he acquiesced to it in that moment. He was like, you're right. He didn't say this obviously because he couldn't speak, but he was like, okay, yeah, I would rather die than let my son suffer out here. And again, when his son's dead, he doesn't have that reason. Yeah,
I think that's what it was. I mean, originally his idea was he probably was pretty sure he was gonna die. I mean, he was. Let's face it, he was fucked up in a bad way. And there was with the infection. I mean, they don't have, antibiotics and shit out there, right? You got to figure a guy that messed up is going to die, and he probably thought the same thing. And the guy gave him and said, "Hey, look, we're hanging around here, dragging you around. It's not doing your son any good. It's not doing anybody else any good. Just let go." And I think he was fighting it for a while, and at least the way I interpreted it, I think he was ready to go at that point until, his son got in the way, and Tom Hardy's, true sense of being the Tom Hardy character was awful. I mean, he was a reprehensible dude. But that doesn't change the fact necessarily about the kind of deal that they had until the son got killed.
And maybe that's your. Oh, go ahead, Brad.
I was just gonna say I just think it's one of those things where I totally see where you guys are coming from. Felipe just commented again and says, why would Leo give up? He fought too hard for his son to live in the flashbacks, and Leo, I mean, the character knows that this Tom Hardy character has no love for his son. Like whether he watches, him kill his son before he dies, or he's like, "Oh, Tom Hardy, go ahead and kill me." Like, do you really think Tom Hardy is gonna let his son live and be okay and guide him back? Like, you know what I mean? I don't know. I see where you're coming from. I don't agree.
Yeah.
Well, that's
And
kind of the redemptive element of this movie. Like, if there is a redemption arc here, this is a movie about how being alive equals suffering, and it sucks. This is a character who had given in to death, and I guess if his redemption is anywhere, it's not at the end of the movie. It's in this exact scene here where he gives up and is okay with death, and then because of other circumstances decides, suffering plus revenge is more what he wants than to just kind of let go. So yeah, that's where I see it's this movie. Like I can't see him. I don't know how else to interpret that scene from the way it was blocked to the way it kind of was recalled later. I feel pretty firm on that, or at least for me personally.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, good.
All right.
Very
all
good.
right. One more thing I want to bring up.
All right, then we got to move on.
All right. So at the end, revenge drives him for the whole second 2/3 of the movie till the end, and he does the revenge is in God's hand. All of a sudden, he says revenge is in God's hand thing. You think it would have been a cool ending if what's his name didn't die? Or what if he walked away? You know what I mean? Like, how does that play into what this movie is about? I mean, was it really about survival, or was it about getting to a revenge point? And it's just something to think about. We'll never know. We don't have to argue it here. We don't have time.
See, I think, and I don't know. I think that's where the movie muddies its message a little bit, because I almost feel like, Tom Hardy was running away. He didn't really have many supplies with him.
He was fucked.
You know what I mean? He was fucked out there by himself. Like, is he really going to get to wherever it was he was going with, like, no supplies, only the clothes on his back and what little he could take? Like, I feel like if Leo was really going to be like, let revenge be in God's hands or whatever, he'd have let him go injured off into the snow, you know what I mean? And whatever happened from there happened, right? But the fact that he lets him wash down the water 3 feet, knowing that the Native Americans are going to kill him, kind of steals away from the power of that moment for me personally.
Interesting movie. I mean, there's a lot here to talk about. The theme seems pretty simple, but maybe the more you kind of peel that onion back, maybe it's not so simple, and that's what makes good movies.
I think that's why I enjoy so much about it. I didn't walk away from this one saying, like, white was white, black was black, up is up and down is down. Like, I feel like I think the water is muddy here, and I think it's intentionally so. I think that's part of why we're able to discuss this in as much detail as we are today, is because there's a lot of extremely complex themes that were presented in a not non-linear, but like in a not very direct manner, and that's part of why I love this movie so much.
And thank goodness for movies that make you think like that maybe have multiple interpretations. It's the whole reason we have fucking podcasts to talk about movies, right? Mm-hmm. If you just watch something and it hit you over the head with an anvil, and there's no possible room for different interpretations, how exciting would that be to listen to a review show, or, you know what I mean? Not so much for me.
Can you imagine if we had done, instead of The Revenant tonight, if we'd reviewed, like, I don't know, Sisters or something like that? Like, it wouldn't have had as much to talk about.
Maybe. Although I haven't seen Sisters, so I'm withholding judgment. I don't know. It could be.
Probably we'll never see it.
It could be one of the best movies of the year. I saw it, and it wasn't. It was one of the worst. But you never know.
Our tastes vary. Who knows? Things could be. I mean, just look at Gem. Right?
Gem. Poltergeist.
Look
at Poltergeist. That's probably our biggest example.
Right. All right. Well, I'm sure we could squeak out at least another 40 minutes of crawling and grunting for The Revenant, but we do need to.
How did we pull out Gem while we were talking about The Revenant? That's what I want to think about.
Can we dust off? Can we put Gem in a box? Or I feel like 2015 is over. I think Gem is.
It was a touchstone of 2015.
It was a touchstone.
We can't yet because Gem comes out on Blu-ray on Tuesday. So.
Oh, I'll have to rush out and not get that.
Not on my wish list.
All right. So moving on to plugs. So I just wanted to give a quick shout out to Straight Outta Compton, which is also coming out on Blu-ray this Tuesday. I can't believe how quickly movies are coming out on Blu-ray these days. It seems like, what was it, like 2.5 months, 3 months turnaround time on that? That came out. Yeah. In any event, great film if you have not seen it yet. I know it really isn't on any Oscar lists, which, I suppose that's another discussion. But phenomenal film. Definitely check it out. It's coming out on Blu-ray Tuesday. Jim, what have you got?
Not really a plug, just kind of a little bit of an announcement. Didn't get to see any movies this past weekend or watch any TV really or anything. Oh, yeah, well, I'm not going to mention that. We had a TV set up with a Blu-ray player in our hospitality suite at the event, and I had brought some movies on Blu-ray that I legitimately bought at a store or online. And some dude walks in with yeah.
All right. Don't name any names.
Walks in. I'm not gonna. I don't even know
some dude.
Some dude walks in with screeners of like currently released movies, and I'm like, dude, you're crazy. But anyway, that's what I wasn't going to talk about. I was going to talk about the Oscar nominations came out this week.
Yes.
Right, or just before the weekend. So I recommend that people go take a look at what's been nominated. There's a lot of buzz about it, both good and bad, and a little bit of controversy mixed in there with the lack of ethnic or non-white nominees. So I don't know if we'll actually get into that, but we'll certainly be talking about the Oscars on a show coming up. So check out the Oscar nominations that were released this week.
All right. Excellent. Will, close us out.
That's actually a really good segue into my item, which is kind of a twofold thing. So the period between the Oscar nominations and the Oscar ceremony is 45 days. So I've given myself a little challenge during this time period. I'm going to try to, but in these 45 days, try to watch 45 movies that have been at some point in the past nominated or won an Oscar. Some of these are movies that I've seen before. Some of these aren't. Some of these are for this year. Some of these are for previous years. So I'm just going to be catching up a lot on Oscars history. And so one that I wanted to talk about, one of the 7 Oscar movies I watched this week, just trying to get a front load on this, was a movie that was nominated for one award this year. It's called The 100-Year-Old Man Who Climbed Out the Window and Disappeared. This is nominated for the Best Makeup category, and the reason for that is the lead character is a 40-year-old actor or something like that who plays a 100-year-old man, so he's in old age makeup for most of the movie, and it's pretty darn convincing, compared to what you normally think of from old age makeup. It's basically if Sweden made a much darker version of the Forrest Gump story, kind of going back in time and saying, and this is how he was a part of this major event and how they impacted this type of thing. Not a perfect movie, but going back and looking at it, I like it better than Forrest Gump. So totally worth watching. It's on Amazon Prime right now, so if you're a Prime member, you can watch it for free. If not, you can rent it for a couple bucks. But again, not a movie of the year for me, but definitely a fun watch.
All right. Excellent, excellent. Well, guys, that wraps us up for this week. Thank you for tuning in for another episode. 165. We're making our way to 200, guys.
We're making it.
Yeah. We're going to break it this year. So
200 this year.
Another big milestone. But all right. Well, yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. So for next week, we'll have to figure out what we're doing. We'll figure it out.
It's January. We'll probably watch a terrible movie and talk about it.
It may be time to finish out the Back to the Future series, guys. I don't know. We gotta stick that in somewhere.
Man, you will not let that die.
This from the guy who I begged, please, let's not watch Back to the Future 3. And you're like, no, I'm a completist. I am
a completist, yeah.
You know what? Fine. Fuck it.
Well,
we do not have to watch it. Never.
I think we should get it in. I don't know if we'll figure it out this next. We'll figure it out.
I was trying to be respectful to your ideas, Jim, but if that's the way you want to go, we do not have to watch it.
No, we can watch it.
Nope. I would be happy never watching that movie again. But I was trying to be a gracious, host and moderator and make sure all needs were met. But It's all good.
Okay.
All right. Anyway,
we'll figure it out. Like, honestly, between that and between what's coming out in theaters? Fifth Wave is coming out this week. Everyone's raving about the Fifth Wave. There's The Boy, super popular. The Boy. I don't know. I'm looking at the list right now, and nothing seems like it's the movie. So we'll figure something out.
Indeed, indeed. All right, everyone. Have a good one. We'll see you next week. Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.